The story begins after school, as a girl stands holding another person who has just confessed her feelings to her. Nearby, her male childhood friend watches the scene quietly. He reflects on how almost everyone around her seems drawn to his friend lately. At the same time, he feels frustrated that nobody pays attention to him in the same way. Once the confession ends, she walks toward him and begins heading home beside him. He cannot understand why she embraced her despite planning to reject her feelings. From his perspective, her behavior feels confusing and contradictory. She explains that rejecting someone does not require cruelty or distance. Even so, he still fails to understand her reasoning. She casually remarks that his inability to understand such things might explain why he struggles to become popular himself, which irritates him further, even though he recognizes she is speaking honestly. As they walk together, he compares himself to her with growing frustration. She appears naturally gifted in every way, taller, more athletic, smarter, and far more confident, drawing attention effortlessly wherever she goes. His thoughts drift back to their childhood. He remembers when he used to be taller than her. Back then, she did not stand out the way she does now. Over the years, she gradually changed, and her appearance and personality became more striking until students eventually began treating her like a prince admired by everyone around her. Before he realized it, she had moved far ahead of him socially. Feeling dissatisfied with himself, he admits internally that he also wants girls to notice him someday. She suggests that they could practice such situations together, though she mentions that things may work differently for boys. Without warning, she steps closer in a bold and confident manner. He complains about her habit of cornering people so dramatically. Her popularity only makes those moments feel even more intimidating. Calmly, she reasons that she was simply being careful not to bump into the nearby vending machine. Even after hearing this, he remains embarrassed as they continue walking home side by side. When they arrive at his house, he begins wondering whether his lack of popularity comes from constantly being associated with her. She does not immediately understand what he means and asks him to clarify. While doing so, she hands him a snack wrapper, expecting him to throw it away. Irritated, he tells her to dispose of it herself instead of relying on him. She then mentions that the room feels warm and uncomfortable. He replies that the air conditioner has still not been repaired. She suggests opening a window instead. Frustrated, he responds that she should do it herself if it bothers her so much. Without argument, she quietly walks over and opens the window while he sits nearby. Watching her, he recalls the recent confessions she has received and brings the topic up. She responds absent-mindedly while standing near the fan. After a brief silence, he asks how someone like him could become more attractive and admired by girls. She replies that she has never deliberately tried to become popular, believing that people simply respond naturally to certain behaviors. She then advises him to pay closer attention to subtle changes in the people around him. To test him, she asks whether he has noticed anything different about her lately. Since they spend almost all their time together, he admits that nothing obvious comes to mind. She then asks what type of girls he likes. He honestly replies that he prefers girls with larger chests. She interprets this as a desire to attract girls with that appearance. After he agrees, she removes her jacket and points out that she herself has changed physically over time, even though he never seemed to notice. He assumes she is referring to her height and awkwardly comments that she has grown taller. She steps closer and clarifies that she means something other than height. The realization unsettles him, and he becomes visibly flustered as he struggles to understand what she is suggesting. She clarifies that if he wants to become comfortable around girls, he needs to get used to interacting with them more naturally. Opening her arms casually, she encourages him to stop overthinking. He hesitates, wondering whether ordinary friends behave in such a way. She insists that socially confident people are usually more relaxed about simple physical contact and that a hug is not a big deal. Before he can properly respond, she steps forward and hugs him naturally. He stiffens immediately and tries to pull away, while she treats the situation as completely normal and continues correcting his misunderstandings. Avoiding eye contact, he insists that he is not prepared for that kind of closeness. She reminds him that they used to behave casually with each other when they were younger. He responds that things no longer feel the same, since both of them have changed with age. She acknowledges that his attitude has shifted because they have both changed over the years. After lightly teasing him, she ends the practice and asks whether he feels slightly more comfortable. He warns her that continuing like this could make things emotionally complicated for him. She agrees to stop for the day and prepares to leave. He feels relieved and thanks her as she heads home. Once she is gone, he sits alone and worries that this strange practice might continue. Although he still wants to become more popular, he fears that spending time with her in this way will complicate their relationship. Because of that, he decides he must refuse the next time she suggests it. Only moments later, the door opens again and she returns unexpectedly. Without hesitation, she wonders whether he wants to continue the practice the next day. He remains silent for a brief moment, carefully considering it. In the end, despite his earlier resolve, he quietly agrees. On the following day after school, a girl approaches the MC's popular friend, Prince, and hands the protagonist a bento meant for him. Casually calling him Prince's aide, she asks him to deliver it before walking off with the other students. The request immediately irritates him. A bitter expression crosses his face as he mutters to himself that he is not anyone's assistant. His gaze drifts toward Prince, who receives attention from the people around him with effortless ease. The sight only deepens his frustration. No matter how much he tries to deny it, he cannot stop himself from wishing that he possessed even a fraction of that kind of popularity. Sometime later, the girl returns and notices the gloomy look lingering on his face. She casually remarks that he appears depressed before asking whether he truly desires the kind of popularity that brings troublesome attention and unnecessary complications. Her words irritate him further. He rejects the idea internally while growing annoyed at how casually she continues making remarks like that toward him. While trying to calm himself down, his attention shifts toward the enormous amount of food she is carrying. The sight leaves him genuinely baffled. He wonders how anybody could possibly eat that much food alone. The more he thinks about it, the more he realizes that she has always been like this. Whenever he sees her, she is almost constantly eating something. Even now, she casually continues eating several meat buns one after another without showing the slightest sign of slowing down. Watching her finish them so naturally leaves him astonished. At the same time, he cannot help but think that the situation feels strangely fitting, considering her own popularity has recently started increasing as well. More and more students have begun referring to her as a prince, and somehow the nickname suits her perfectly. A little later, she approaches him again and casually mentions that something like the hug from before cannot easily be repeated with another person. The statement immediately captures his attention. The moment he hears it, he quickly asks whether there might be an easier method for him to become popular. She answers without hesitation that such a method does exist. At first, he assumes she must be referring to appearance, fashion, or outward charm. That assumption is immediately dismissed by her. Instead, she explains that maintaining eye contact during conversations and smiling naturally while speaking can leave a surprisingly strong impression on others. Wanting to test the advice immediately, he attempts to practice on the spot. The effort collapses almost instantly. The moment he tries to maintain eye contact seriously, tension spreads through his body. His shoulders stiffen, his gaze begins wandering away on its own, and embarrassment quickly overwhelms him. Before long, he gives up completely, unable to tolerate how unnatural the experience feels. Afterward, the two of them head together toward his house. The moment they enter the room, the girl removes her jacket and exhales lightly, mentioning that the weather has become unbearably hot lately, before casually adding that the air conditioning should probably be repaired soon. He instinctively reacts as though trying to stop her from removing the jacket, but confusion overtakes him halfway through the movement. He cannot understand why he reacted that way. If she feels hot, then taking the jacket off is completely normal. There should not be anything strange about it at all. Even so, his thoughts refuse to settle. The problem is not the jacket itself. What unsettles him is the effect her presence continues to have on him. In his mind, his self-control resembles a dam barely holding back overwhelming pressure. As long as their relationship remains safely within the boundaries of friendship, he believes he can continue suppressing those emotions successfully. However, if the feelings pressing against that barrier become any stronger, he fears everything could eventually collapse and completely complicate their relationship. Realizing how dramatic his thoughts sound, he tries convincing himself that he is merely overthinking the situation once again. Yet after spending more time together in the room, he eventually reaches his limit. Gathering his courage, he confesses his feelings directly and asks whether she would consider entering a relationship with him. Her expression softens slightly after hearing the confession, but her response remains gentle and firm. She explains that she never intended for their relationship to develop in that direction. Although she genuinely appreciates his feelings and values the concern he always shows toward her, she believes it would be better for them to remain friends. The answer strikes him harder than he expected. He immediately rejects the idea of quietly pretending nothing happened and insists internally that he does not want to simply remain friends. At the same time, he understands that allowing his emotions to spiral out of control would only worsen the situation. Desperate to calm himself down, he begins relying on small distractions instead. He positions himself near a fan, avoids staring at her directly for too long, and carefully controls his reactions whenever possible. If he can maintain control over his behavior, then perhaps he can eventually regain control over his emotions as well. Meanwhile, she casually adjusts her clothing before commenting that the fit feels different than before. That minor change completely disrupts his concentration again. His eyes immediately dart away, and frustration rises inside him almost instantly. Even the smallest changes in her appearance affect him far more strongly than he wants to admit. Not long afterwards, she suddenly grabs his hand. While holding it, she explains that her body has changed recently because she has been eating more than usual while also undergoing intense training. The closeness catches him entirely off guard. Almost immediately, he steps backward to create distance between them. Being that close already feels far too overwhelming for him to manage comfortably, and he awkwardly questions whether standing that close together is really necessary. Rather than moving away, she closes the distance even further. Calmly, she explains that becoming comfortable with close proximity is important if he truly wants to improve his confidence while speaking with other people. Once again, she encourages him to focus on maintaining eye contact during conversation. By that point, his thoughts have already become completely disorganized. He admits that he no longer even knows what he is supposed to say anymore. Noticing his confusion, she begins suggesting simple phrases for him to repeat while continuing to maintain direct eye contact with her. As he stares at her face, an unexpected realization slowly settles over him. Even after knowing her for so long, her appearance still affects him intensely. Looking at her from such a close distance finally makes him understand why so many people are naturally drawn toward her presence. Sensing his hesitation, she gently encourages him to keep looking at her. Afterward, she gives him additional compliments and phrases to repeat aloud as practice. Unfortunately, the exercise quickly overwhelms him. His words begin stumbling over themselves, and embarrassment spreads visibly across his face. Eventually, he admits that he simply cannot continue the exercise properly. She questions whether he is truly serious about wanting to become popular, reminding him that she is only trying to help him become more confident around others. He honestly admits that speaking so directly while maintaining eye contact with someone feels almost impossible for him. After hearing that answer, her gaze slowly lowers. For a brief moment, she quietly assumes that someone with her appearance probably cannot be described as cute that easily by others. Then, while still looking directly into his eyes, she softly offers the same compliment toward him instead. The sudden reversal leaves him momentarily speechless. Immediately afterward, her hand gently covers his eyes while she tells him to rest briefly before continuing. He quietly thanks her. In response, she once again reminds him that they are friends before encouraging him to continue practicing. As more time passes, he gradually notices a change within himself. Eventually, he tells her that making eye contact no longer feels as difficult as before. For the first time, he feels like he has overcome some of his nervousness without hurting their friendship. But instead of stopping, she says they should keep practicing so he can improve even more. He immediately tenses up. The idea still makes him nervous, but she calmly tells him to just keep looking into her eyes. Before he can properly prepare himself, she suddenly closes the distance between them again. The abrupt movement catches him completely off balance, causing him to stumble forward into her. Realizing what just happened, he immediately jerks himself backward and drops into a seated position in complete embarrassment. Meanwhile, she remains surprisingly calm. She explains that she was only attempting to reduce the distance between them for practice before asking him to stand again. Slightly still flustered, he reminds her that the original purpose of the exercise was supposed to involve maintaining eye contact during conversation. In response, she adds that she has been feeling clumsier lately because of how much she has changed recently. Hearing that explanation, he compares her situation to someone suddenly receiving unusual powers they have not yet fully learned to control. As his thoughts drift across everything that happened throughout the day, he slowly notices something unexpected. The pressure inside him no longer feels unbearable. Instead of feeling overwhelmed like before, a strange sense of calm gradually settles over him. The tension he had been carrying for so long now feels significantly lighter, almost as though something tightly wound inside him has finally loosened. Later, he sincerely thanks her once again for helping him practice. She studies his expression carefully for a moment before quietly telling him that his smile finally looks natural. The observation catches him completely by surprise. Awkwardly, he attempts repeating the expression himself, only for embarrassment to return moments later. In class, two girls sit together watching a series on a phone, discussing a dramatic trailer about a terrifying creature described as a massive octopus-like undead monster that hunts its prey. They react with exaggerated excitement while continuing to watch, fully focused on the screen. Behind them, the popular girl from the school notices what they are watching. The two girls immediately turn toward her. Nervous yet admiring, they ask her for protection and call her Mi-kun. She responds with a confident expression and a small smile, assuring them that she will stand by them. Later, during a rainy afternoon, Mi-kun stands quietly by a window, thinking. Her friend arrives and questions whether she truly intends to protect others. Their conversation turns to fear and bravery, but Mi-kun stubbornly insists that she is not scared of anything, even though horror movies obviously make her uncomfortable. The other girl reminds him about a time when Mi-kun got scared after watching something creepy. Back then, she was too frightened to even go to the bathroom alone. He offered to help her and even suggested calling her older sister, but she refused. In the present, the boy asks whether she has overcome that fear. She immediately replies that she was never afraid at all. Even when he tries to show her something frightening, she avoids looking directly at it while still denying fear. He becomes frustrated and tells her she should confront her fears instead of avoiding them. Mii-kun calmly insists that she is fine and does not need to change. The conversation unexpectedly shifts when she calls him cute, catching him off guard and leaving him embarrassed and overthinking her words. They continue talking as she admits she enjoys watching him try to help her improve. He argues that he does not want to watch horror content and claims that overcoming fear will not change his social situation. She disagrees, saying that fear can influence how others perceive someone, especially in social settings. Eventually, the argument becomes playful, and they decide to settle it with a simple game. He complains about the fairness of the situation, but she agrees without hesitation while still insisting she has no fear. The matter remains unresolved, though the atmosphere becomes lighter. Afterward, they return home together and begin watching a horror series. The atmosphere between them feels awkward yet competitive, with both trying to appear calmer than the other. As the show continues, he notices that Mii-kun seems slightly tense and points it out. He reassures her that she does not need to pretend to be fearless while he is there. Meanwhile, he is also distracted by the cold weather, noticing that she is dressed more warmly than usual, which makes him more aware of her presence than he intends to be. Even though he insists that he has no intention of frightening her and offers to stop watching at any time, Mii-kun refuses to back down. She insists that she will prove she has no fear and also declares that afterward she will help him overcome his dislike of insects. He becomes confused about how the situation has turned into another strange challenge between them and again tells her that she should admit it if she feels uncomfortable so he can stop the series immediately. As the horror scenes begin building tension, he suddenly reacts loudly when something on the screen is about to happen, repeatedly warning her that a frightening moment is coming. Mii-kun insists she is watching carefully, even though she is clearly struggling to remain composed. Thinking she might panic, he quickly tries to spoil the suspense by saying the scene is probably harmless, so she will not be startled. Soon after, a scene shows a girl approaching someone while holding a bottle of juice, creating a brief moment of tension before it resolves harmlessly. Mii-kun quietly remarks that the scene was not frightening after all. The boy then explains that horror stories often rely on repeated patterns and predictable tricks to build suspense, trying to sound confident. Despite this, Mii-kun continues insisting she is not afraid. He predicts that the real scare will come later after the series finishes misleading viewers with smaller moments. However, the next scene proves him wrong. Instead of a frightening moment, the build-up leads into a calm and intimate interaction between characters. Mii-kun points this out, saying he had been nervous over nothing. She then proposes an imaginary scenario and asks what he would do if a girl sitting beside him were actually frightened during a horror movie. He immediately feels as though he has been pulled into another one of her strange thought experiments. After considering everything she has previously said, he awkwardly suggests that comforting someone with a hug might help. Before he can continue, Mii-kun suddenly leans against him from behind so they can keep watching the screen together. He stiffens at the sudden contact and asks why she is holding him like that. She calmly replies that standing in front of him would block the screen and prevent them from watching properly. Although he protests and says the situation feels awkward, she dismisses his concerns and treats the action casually. Without realizing it, she grips him a little tighter, making him complain dramatically that she is crushing him instead of comforting him. Even while reacting outwardly, he reflects that she often behaves in a childish manner. At the same time, he realizes that their long-standing friendship has gradually started to feel different in a way he can no longer ignore. After he reacts loudly again during another scene, Mii-kun accuses him of being the one who is actually scared and points out that he screamed first. He tries to avoid the argument by suggesting they stop watching the series altogether. Still refusing to admit defeat, he claims his reaction only came from imagining how someone else might scream in that situation. Mii-kun teases him and jokingly asks whether holding hands would make him feel calmer. He immediately rejects the suggestion and insists that she is trying to twist the situation so she can claim victory. As the series continues, both of them remain focused on the screen while the tone gradually shifts from horror toward romance. The boy assumes the episode will likely end with the characters kissing. Mii-kun slowly relaxes as she realizes the story is no longer as frightening as she expected, and her grip loosens as she tries to act composed again. Noticing this, the boy admits defeat in their earlier challenge and points out that she has finally admitted her fear. She soon notices the red mark left on his hand from how tightly she had been holding him. Embarrassed, she quickly apologizes, realizing she accidentally hurt him without meaning to. He brushes it off and tells her it is not a big deal. Hearing that, Mii-kun finally admits the truth. Ghosts, zombies, and supernatural things genuinely scare her, and she has been frightened the entire time they were watching. Meanwhile, the characters in the drama move into a romantic scene and eventually kiss, making the atmosphere between the two viewers feel even more awkward. Right then, Mii-kun suddenly hears a strange noise near the wall and immediately gets startled. Nervously, she asks whether the boy's older sister is somewhere else in the house, clearly still affected by the horror mood. He quickly tells her that his sister's not home yet. Looking outside, he points out that it is already getting dark and suggests that she should probably head home soon. But moments later, he panics seeing Miyakun shaking. He starts loudly calling for help, desperately calling for Yuzuki. Even with all the panic, Miyakun refuses to move and says it would be easier to just stay where they are, while he continues frantically calling for Yuzuki to hurry over. Miyakun meets her friend again and they continue talking about how to make him more socially confident. This time, they focus even more on using people's first names directly instead of avoiding them. Mii explains that close relationships should feel natural, so people should call each other properly by name. She questions what couples are even supposed to do if they keep avoiding first names forever. The boy answers hesitantly and says that simply telling someone to relax should already be enough. Mii immediately disagrees. She explains that embarrassment should not decide how people address each other. In her opinion, people should simply do it properly. A moment later, the boy calls her Ada. Mii corrects him immediately and explains that Ada is her family name, not her given name. The boy defends himself by saying that some couples still use surnames with each other and that relationships like that can still seem admirable. He challenges him and suggests that he probably feels embarrassed rather than truly preferring that style. The boy admits that he does not really have a good argument against her point. He also says that being correct does not automatically make a discussion into a competition. Mii replies that she never treats it like a contest and only sees it as a matter of communication. As the conversation continues, the boy starts thinking more seriously about it. He realizes that he has avoided making this kind of change for a very long time. At the same time, he notices something else about Mei. She naturally calls almost everyone by their first names. He remembers several examples from the way she speaks. She casually calls her friends Shidu, Yuzi-chan, Yuri, Mi-kun, Momoka, and Masaki, and she even uses first names for teachers like Kyuko. Little by little, he understands that she does not force herself to speak that way. It is simply natural for her. After realizing that, he finally asks Mia to demonstrate by calling him by his first name. Mia answers in a light and amused tone. She calls him Ru, then casually adds his full name, Akai-ru. The boy reacts immediately and insists that she should only use his first name. Mia repeats it without hesitation and calls him Ru again. Her expression stays calm and confident as always, while the boy grows visibly more frustrated. He asks why she cares so much about it, and Mia continues insisting that he should practice properly without hesitating. Not long afterward, the two of them go to Rui's house together. After they arrive, Rui casually mentions that the weather still feels fairly cool outside. Mii briefly agrees, and then the room falls silent for a moment. As the silence settles in, Rui starts thinking about the previous day. During the training, the atmosphere between them feels strangely comfortable and natural. Now, however, he no longer knows whether that feeling is real or whether the situation itself creates it. The uncertainty stays in his mind and slowly makes him uneasy. While Rui stays lost in thought, Mii quietly walks up behind him. She suggests creating a situation that will help him feel more comfortable calling a girl by her first name. Rui looks startled by the sudden suggestion, but he still listens carefully. Without waiting long, Mii completely shifts the exercise. She tells him to focus on her voice, then leans close and calmly repeats his first name near his ear. Again and again, she softly says, Rui, in a steady and composed voice. Rui immediately feels uncomfortable and instinctively moves away from her a little. He complains that she is going too far. Mii denies teasing him and insists that she treats the exercise seriously. A moment later, she changes the scenario again. She tells Rai to imagine a beach setting and picture a romantic moment with a partner while responding naturally as though everything around him is real. Rui closes his eyes and tries to follow along, although the situation feels painfully unnatural and makes it difficult for him to focus. Inside the imaginary scenario, Mii encourages him to speak more naturally. Rui answers awkwardly with uncertain and hesitant words. Mii quickly points out that short answers are not enough. She urges him to speak with more confidence and pushes the exercise further by telling him to call out to the girl directly by name. Rui freezes for a moment. He tries to speak, stumbles over his words, accidentally uses the wrong form of address, and then corrects himself immediately. The mistake only makes him more nervous. Mii notices the hesitation immediately and firmly states that hesitation is not acceptable during the exercise. Rui finally admits what has bothered him the entire time. He explains that embarrassment affects him much more than he wants to admit. To him, changing the way he addresses someone feels like changing the relationship itself, so the adjustment carries much more meaning than it seems to on the surface. She calmly answers that change is not always bad. After a short pause, she adds that the training might already be reaching its final stage. Rui listens carefully. After quietly thinking for a moment, he finally makes up his mind. He says that he will stop hesitating and continue the exercise properly. He also says that this time he truly intends to try seriously. Mii smiles faintly at his answer and casually remarks that using a first name should not really change anything between them because it is something simple and unimportant. Rui, however, answers seriously. He explains that because she asks him to do it, he has already decided that he will continue calling her that from now on. For a brief moment, neither of them speaks. Then, almost suddenly, Mia announces that she should head home. As she turns to leave, Rui quickly stands up and moves toward her. Before she can continue speaking, he reaches out and covers her mouth with his hand. Mia immediately pulls away and runs off without looking back. Later that night, Rui sits at the dinner table and eats quickly while barely paying attention to anything around him. His sister notices his strange behavior almost immediately and scolds him for raising his voice while eating. After that, Rui quietly finishes the rest of his meal in silence before leaving the table soon afterward. At the same time, Mia stays alone in her room at home. A voice from outside asks whether something has happened and points out that her behavior seems unusual. Mia immediately denies it. However, the voice points out that she only eats 3 bowls of rice during dinner, which apparently is less than usual for her. Mia again insists that nothing is wrong and refuses to explain further. After the conversation ends, Mia quietly opens the Notes app on her phone. Inside the app, she wrote that she wants him to call her by her first name. She also predicted that he will probably ask her to use his first name too, so she reminds herself to stay calm and not get nervous. She stares at his name for a while and realizes how much their relationship has already changed. After rereading her notes, Mia slowly understands something important. Their relationship has already become far more personal than she originally expected, and hearing him call her by her first name no longer feels ordinary to her. Rui arrives at school the next day and listens as Mia continues talking about conversations. She compares them to perfume, explaining that even an unpleasant ingredient can improve the overall result and make the final impression feel deeper. She claims that even awkward jokes or slightly embarrassing remarks can make conversations feel more lively and engaging. She then announces that they will later practice this style of conversation and tells them to pay close attention. While listening to her seemingly endless speech, Rui quietly assumes that she is only trying to distract herself from having run away the previous day. After entering the classroom, Mia notices 2 girls talking together. Their discussion revolves around words connected to closeness and affection. One prefers a term associated with companionship, while the other mentions something leaning more toward physical affection. As they continue, the conversation gradually becomes more personal and embarrassing. Mia casually walks over and joins them. Rui sits in the chair ahead and unintentionally overhears everything. As the discussion becomes increasingly awkward, he internally complains that it has clearly gone beyond harmless teasing. He decides that he should stop listening and distance himself from it. However, just as one of the girls begins speaking more openly about relationships, Rui's curiosity pulls him back in, and he continues listening despite himself. At that moment, Momo suddenly raises her voice and blurts out an extremely inappropriate joke. The surrounding students freeze in shock at what they hear. Momoka quickly clarifies that she heard those ideas from one of her older brother's books. Mia responds with a smile and warns her not to believe strange ideas taken from indecent comics. Rui finally loses patience and speaks up, telling them to stop talking so loudly about embarrassing topics inside the classroom. Just then, a beautiful girl named Rurogawa Shiju enters the room, immediately drawing the attention of nearly everyone present. Whispers spread through the classroom regarding her appearance and reputation. Some students admire Shiju's beauty, while others mention that she belongs to the school's morals committee and ranks near the top of the entire year academically. A few boys envy the idea of dating her, but another student reminds them that she is also known for her cold and intimidating personality. Mia listens while talking with her friend Kurosu, who jokingly acts like a narrator from a romantic comedy. However, the moment he notices Shizu staring at him sharply, he quickly leaves with Momoka. As they leave, Mia casually reminds them to put their chairs back properly. She keeps laughing until Shizu walks up to her and scolds her for acting so carelessly. She warns that Mia's grades have become so bad that she could repeat the school year if this continues. Rui then asks about Mia's recent exam results. Mia casually admits that she failed every test. Hearing this, Shizu turns to Rui and says she heard rumors that he helps Mia study after school because of his top grades. Rui notices how irritated she looks and quietly wonders why she seems so upset. Meanwhile, Mia awkwardly tries to describe their study sessions, but Shizu interrupts and declares that she will supervise them personally from now on, as she doubts what has actually been happening. Later, the 3 of them travel together to Rui's house. Once they arrive, Mia nervously warns them not to get angry before revealing her test papers. The results are shockingly low, leaving Rui stunned as he looks through them. Mia immediately reminds him that she had already warned him not to lose his temper. Rui reacts with disbelief, raising his voice as he points out that she has practically used up every remaining chance she had before the next examinations. He criticizes her for hiding the truth and questions how she could behave so carelessly after previously worrying about being transferred into a sports-focused class due to poor academic performance. He even mocks the contrast between her public reputation and her actual results. While the argument continues, Rua privately wonders whether this is really the appropriate moment for them to be discussing popularity lessons and social techniques. Eventually, Mia turns to Shiju for her opinion on the situation. Shiju calmly states that the exams are mainly based on review material and believes Mia could answer most questions correctly if she genuinely devoted herself to studying. However, her expression soon shifts, and she questions whether Mia has been wasting time instead of studying properly. Mia immediately rejects the accusation, insisting that the topic has nothing to do with their current discussion. Rui observes the exchange and silently reflects on how the conversation keeps turning awkward without reaching any conclusion. Mia firmly states that she and Rui have truly been studying seriously. Shiju responds by questioning how such terrible grades could exist if that were true. Mia steps closer and quietly tells her to trust her words. Shiju immediately tells her not to touch her, pointing out that Mia has relied on the same charming behavior since middle school. Mia simply apologizes calmly. Rui watches their exchange and recalls that the two girls attended the same middle school. However, he also remembers hearing that they were placed in different classes and likely did not spend much time together despite knowing each other for years. Suddenly, Rurogawa Shiju calls Rui over and directly asks whether he and Mia have truly been spending their time studying together. Her serious tone makes him nervous, as he fears she might discover the unusual practice sessions they have actually been doing instead of normal studying. Shiju then tells him to demonstrate what their usual study sessions look like. Rui quickly agrees, though he still feels uneasy due to everything that happened during their previous sessions. The three of them begin studying together. Rui explains that this is the usual way they review material. Shiju remains suspicious and asks whether they actually study seriously during these sessions. Rui immediately denies anything strange, insisting that he and Mia are only normal friends. At that moment, Rui suddenly feels something strike him beneath the table. Mia stretches her leg forward and lightly nudges him with her foot. When Rui reacts in confusion, she casually claims that her legs are simply long and behaves as though nothing unusual has happened. Trying to stabilize the situation, Ruiz quickly suggests that they should focus seriously on studying for several hours, just as they normally do. He proposes concentrating on memorization exercises for the day. Shiju questions whether Mia is truly capable of sitting quietly and studying for such a long time. Rui defends her by saying that she usually studies properly when examinations are near. He adds that her earlier failure may have been caused by her not feeling well at the time. Meanwhile, Rui secretly attempts to stop Mia's behavior by lightly tickling her foot beneath the table. Mia immediately overreacts and loudly accuses him of bothering her. Shiju watches the situation with a cold, unwavering stare while Rui desperately insists that he only touched her foot and nothing else. However, Shiju interprets the scene in the worst possible way. She concludes that Rui is hiding something and behaving suspiciously. Because of this, she decides that leaving Mia alone with him would only lead to further problems and might even cause her to fail the school year. She therefore insists that the safest solution is to supervise every moment of Mia's studying personally. After hearing this, Rui argues that treating Mia too strictly will only make her run away again. He says that he has observed her study habits since childhood and believes he understands the best method for teaching her. He also reminds Shiju that he currently holds the top academic ranking in their year. Shiju immediately replies that his methods have clearly failed if the situation has already become this bad. She then openly states that she dislikes him. Rui is completely shocked by her words. At first, he assumes she is only upset because he tried to boast about his academic ranking, but he quickly becomes confused and starts wondering whether people genuinely dislike him. Before the argument can continue, Mia interrupts and tells both of them not to fight because of her. Rurogawa Shiju firmly announces that Mia will remain under her direct supervision from now on. Rui tries to argue that a calmer and less restrictive environment would help Mia study more effectively, though part of his attention remains focused on the fact that Shiju seems to dislike him personally. Mia suddenly begins speaking about warmth and closeness between people, then questions why Shiju continues to isolate herself emotionally from others. Shiju becomes confused by the sudden direction of the conversation and asks what she means. Rui immediately grows alarmed and warns Shiju not to get drawn into Mia's behavior. Before anyone can intervene, Mia suddenly hugs Shiju and happily comments on how comforting she feels. Shiju stiffens instantly and protests, clearly uncomfortable with physical contact. She demands to be released, growing increasingly flustered. Mia ignores her resistance and teasingly points out that Shiju keeps rejecting boys despite seeming interested in romance. Shiju immediately denies this, but Mia continues holding her from behind while saying that she has recently learned many things and now believes people should be more honest about their feelings. At that moment, Shiju quietly admits that she wants Mia to spend time only with her instead of constantly being with Rui. She complains that Mia is always around him and even suggests that the two of them might secretly be dating. Rui immediately denies this loudly. However, Shiju continues emotionally, pointing out that Rui has stayed by Mia's side since childhood, implying he should not monopolize her attention forever. Watching this exchange, Rui begins to suspect that Shiju is not truly angry about studying at all. Instead, he realizes she may simply feel lonely and upset that someone important to her has grown closer to another person. Eventually, Shiju pulls away from Mia's embrace and announces that she is leaving. Mia quickly stops her and promises that she will focus seriously on her studies from now on. Shiju responds coldly that she does not need childish promises. Mia refuses to accept that and gently reminds her that she considers Shiju her closest friend. As she walks away, Shiju bitterly says that Mia probably tells everyone the same thing. Mia immediately denies it and insists those words are meant only for Shiju. Hearing this causes Shiju to hesitate slightly before quietly acknowledging her response. After Shiju leaves, Rui comments that Mia is apparently capable of studying seriously after all. Mia calmly explains that she intends to keep her promise to Shiju. Rui then mentions that Shiju is supposedly her closest friend. Mia notices his reaction and teasingly asks whether he feels bothered by that. Rui awkwardly denies it, though he comments that ranking friendships feels unfair. He then wonders where he would stand on such a list. Mia immediately replies that she has never considered him an ordinary friend at all. Rui complains that her answer sounds unnecessarily harsh. Mia then tells him to say her name again, but not in a casual tone. Instead, she wants him to say it as though she is someone truly important to him. Rui silently repeats her name in his mind but cannot bring himself to say it aloud. Seeing his hesitation, Mia assumes her earlier decision to run away may have permanently changed things between them. She quietly concludes that he may never naturally call her name like that again. After a brief silence, Rui finally manages to say her name aloud. Mia becomes pleased and comments that he is probably just embarrassed. She suggests that they should only speak to each other like this when they are alone. Rui reluctantly agrees and repeats her name once more. As they stand close together, he suddenly loses his balance and accidentally falls against Mia. At that exact moment, the door opens and Shiju steps back inside. She says that she returned because she forgot her phone and heard a loud noise from outside. However, the moment she sees their awkward position, she immediately misinterprets the situation. Convinced that she walked into a misunderstanding, she loudly accuses them. Rui instantly denies it and urgently insists that nothing like that is going on.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand,